What if Earth shifted just 1% closer to the sun? Would the days just get a little hotter? Or would we be racing toward extinction? Would the ocean start boiling? Would our crops catch fire? Could we survive in underground cities, or would the atmosphere collapse first? And how long would humanity last before everything we know burns away? It sounds like science fiction, but a tiny change in Earth's orbit could create global chaos faster than anyone expects. And in this alternate reality, we're not talking about centuries or decades. We're talking about days. Because when Earth drifts even slightly closer to the sun, the consequences aren't subtle, they're catastrophic. It all began with a shift, just a small one. Only 1%. A barely noticeable nudge in Earth's orbit brought us about 1.5 million kilometers closer to the sun. In the vast scale of the universe, that's almost nothing. But for us, it was everything. But now, with our new orbit just 1% closer, the energy Earth received from the sun increased significantly. Radiation levels rose, the atmosphere began to swell, and weather patterns started to shift. But these changes weren't enough to set off alarms. Meteorologists blamed it on seasonal shifts or freak atmospheric behavior. We didn't know it yet, but the countdown had begun. UV levels spiked sharply, and people started suffering sunburns within 10 minutes of exposure. Sun halos, strange atmospheric distortions, and unusually bright dawns began appearing around the globe. It looked beautiful, but it wasn't. Nature had noticed the change, and it was the first to react. At first, there were no explosions, no meteors, no warning sirens. The change was silent, invisible, and undetected by most. But in that subtle movement, Earth had drifted out of its perfect balance, out of the Goldilocks zone where life thrives. Scientists would scramble to find a cause, but by the time answers started forming, the consequences were already unfolding. And they were irreversible. Earth normally orbits at about 149.6 million kilometers from the sun, a sweet spot that allows liquid water, breathable air, and life. Theories poured in. Some blamed a gravitational disruption from a passing celestial body. Others pointed at a failed deep space experiment, or even deliberate planetary engineering. But theories didn't matter. Earth had moved, and now the laws of physics would take over. The sun wasn't just shining, it was accelerating our extinction. On day one, the signs were subtle. Satellites detected a minor increase in solar energy, barely 0.8%. Climate data started flagging minor anomalies in weather models. By day 3, things became harder to ignore. Birds began migrating early, flying erratically and abandoning their usual paths. Deep-sea fish were found near the surface, behaving as if something was chasing them. Airports had to shut down runways because the tarmac was melting. In the Middle East, rooftop water tanks exploded from internal pressure. Rolling blackouts struck across Asia, the US, and parts of Europe. And this was just the beginning. Fish migrated to deeper, colder waters, and coral reefs began bleaching at alarming rates. Fishermen in Southeast Asia and South America returned with empty nets. The ocean had become a desert. Power grids were pushed to the brink as air conditioners roared non-stop in homes, hospitals, and schools. It tore across island nations, leaving entire communities submerged. Organ failure and dehydration killed people in air-conditioned buildings. Outdoor activity became life-threatening. In North Africa, sandstorms the size of countries reached across the Mediterranean into southern Europe. In India and Bangladesh, millions were displaced by heat, not war or politics. The term sun refugees became a new category in global crisis reports. And those who fled north found no safety waiting for them. And in the United States, tornadoes struck urban centers without a single siren sounding. Polar animals like seals and bears began moving south, abandoning their melting territories. It was a biological panic instincts triggering before science caught up. Some regions suffered deadly droughts, while others were flooded with freak storms. Earth's atmosphere expanded, causing pressure shifts and unpredictable jet streams. Superstorms appeared with almost no warning, forming in mere hours. Weather satellites couldn't keep up, and forecasting became useless. The hydrological cycle, Earth's natural water regulation system, had started to fail. Earth's creatures felt something we had yet to see. On day 5, major cities started to feel the heat literally. Asphalt streets began softening under the sun. In Phoenix, Arizona, a child stepped outside barefoot and suffered third-degree burns on the sidewalk. Day 7 marked the first true planetary shift. Water began to disappear. Evaporation rates doubled in just 1 week. Lakes receded visibly, rivers turned to shallow streams, and even glaciers began shedding ice at unprecedented speeds. The oceans, absorbing more heat, started warming from the surface downward. In marine ecosystems, phytoplankton, the foundation of the food chain, started dying. The heat caused water vapor to rise rapidly into the atmosphere, but rain didn't follow. Instead, clouds formed and dissipated without releasing moisture. By day 10, the air itself began changing. Over the Pacific, a tropical depression turned into the first ever recorded Category 6 hurricane. Day 12 brought a new layer of chaos. Humans who had once dominated this planet began losing control of their own bodies. Hospitals overflowed with heatstroke victims. In Southern California, hundreds collapsed at a single music festival before noon. Cities once considered temperate like Moscow, Toronto, and Berlin recorded temperatures of 45 degrees Celsius and beyond. Infrastructure cracked, train rails warped. Ice packs melted in homes before they reached the fridge. Corn in Iowa dried up in the stalk. Wheat in Europe rotted from humidity. In China and India, rice paddies turned sour and gave off methane gas. Trees, too, began to shed not in autumn fashion, but from trauma. Entire ecosystems blinked out in a week. Earth's climate belt had shifted, and nowhere was safe. No bees meant no fruits, no vegetables, and no renewal. You're rewriting the planet's entire internal engine. By day 14, nature began dying loudly. Crops failed en masse. Astronomers confirmed the worst. Earth's new orbit was stable. That 1% shift, permanent. The solar energy we now received, about 2% more than before, had changed the balance forever. Livestock collapsed in their pens. Poultry farms couldn't cool their animals fast enough. Even insects vanished, either dead or fleeing. Pollination stopped. Forests fell silent. No rustling. No bird song. Just the low howl of hot wind through brittle leaves. We were locked in a closer embrace with the sun, and it wasn't letting go. Our home had become a slow-cooking planet, and our species on the brink of collapse. By day 15, the truth settled in. There would be no drifting back, no self-correction, no miracle reversal. But this was only the beginning. Because when you move Earth even slightly closer to the sun, you're not just changing the temperature. Could our tectonic plates survive the added stress? Would the Earth's magnetic field hold? Could the oceans reach a boiling point? The heat wasn't rising anymore, it was raging. Seasons collapsed into a single endless inferno. The sky burned white, the soil steamed, and global humidity turned the air into boiling mist. Cities that had survived so far were now silent, suffocating heat chambers. Mount Tambora, dormant for centuries, erupted so violently it blackened the skies across Asia. The tremors shattered freeways, crumbled glass towers, and sent tsunamis racing toward the coast. Magma burst from cracks in the seafloor, sending plumes of steam into the sky. Ocean temperatures spiked, marine life boiled in place. The ocean, once Earth's great stabilizer, had become unstable. As they bubbled up into the atmosphere, they triggered the release of methane in massive bursts. This greenhouse gas was 86 times more potent than carbon dioxide. The atmosphere became a trap, holding every degree of heat inside. Millions evacuated inland, but it wasn't enough. Aftershocks collapsed what little remained. In Australia, firestorms combined into a mega blaze so large it was visible from space. Governments imposed strict curfews and indoor-only laws, but infrastructure was failing. Power grids melted, water reserves dried up, and panic set in. The world was suffocating. Smoke blanketed the southern hemisphere. Breathing became a daily struggle, even thousands of kilometers away. Even Arctic regions saw temperatures climb past 30 degrees Celsius. The last places once considered safe were now shrinking. Migration turned into chaos as millions fled to cooler regions that no longer existed. Countries collapsed under the weight of climate refugees. California, once the world's tech capital, became a wasteland of dust and silence. Human DNA, exposed to unprecedented radiation, began to mutate. Birth defects increased. Fertility rates plummeted. Entire generations were being lost in the womb. Volcanic ash grounded flights, collapsed buildings, and blotted out sunlight for days. In Italy, Vesuvius cracked open again, burying towns under molten rock and fire. The sky was no longer blue, it was ash gray. Fish floated lifeless to the surface, while coral reefs disintegrated into white skeletons. Algae blooms turned toxic and spread rapidly. Coastal economies collapsed almost overnight. But what no one realized yet was that the real destruction was beginning beneath our feet. As Earth absorbed more solar radiation, the mantle beneath the crust responded with chaotic energy. Heat from above met heat from below, and Earth's insides began to churn like a pressure cooker. The once slow movement of tectonic plates turned into a violent shuffle. Earthquakes erupted in places that had never known fault lines. It was as if the planet itself was trying to scream. Volcanoes exploded across the Pacific Ring of Fire. In the United States, the San Andreas Fault slipped with terrifying speed, releasing a quake that ripped apart cities from Los Angeles to San Francisco. Meanwhile, deep under the Atlantic Ocean, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge erupted with new energy. As the oceans absorbed more heat, they lost their ability to breathe. Oxygen levels dropped dangerously, creating vast dead zones, but the worst was yet to come. Beneath the ocean floor, methane hydrates frozen gas deposits began to thaw. Wildfires ignited spontaneously. Forests erupted in flames without lightning or sparks. Hospitals filled with patients suffering from respiratory failure and heat stroke. Emergency services could no longer respond fast enough. In northern Canada, people wore oxygen masks just to go outside. Then came the genetic collapse. Radiation-proof shelters were constructed underground and inside mountains. The wealthy and powerful disappeared into bunkers, leaving billions behind. Above ground, life expectancy dropped by the day. Skin cancers became unavoidable and organ failure increased. The planet itself had turned against us. With surface life unsustainable, humanity turned to space. A plan was proposed, Project Helioshift. Using orbiting ion drives connected to Earth's magnetic field, we would attempt to shift our planet back into its former orbit. One of the stabilizers failed mid-sequence and exploded in low orbit. The debris field collided with the others, triggering a chain reaction. One drive re-entered the atmosphere and crashed into Greenland, melting thousands of square kilometers of ancient ice. The project was over. It was an act of desperation, but it was all we had left. Massive plasma stabilizers were launched into orbit. Ion engines were charged and aligned, not in one great blast, but in a slow global combustion. Skyscrapers stood as blackened bones in empty skylines. Nature had reclaimed nothing, because nature had died too. Earth had become a tomb. Its blue color faded into copper and charcoal. Ozone disintegrated completely. Without protection, solar radiation scorched everything it touched. This wasn't coincidence. It was a message. The signal was coming from a pulsar 300 light years away. But its timing was precise, too precise. For a moment, it worked. The planet's velocity shifted by a fraction. Global temperatures dropped by just 0.3 degrees Celsius, and hope returned. At first, it looked like radiation noise, but then it repeated. And the repetition was unmistakably intelligent. Then disaster. The feedback loop of heat and collapse was irreversible. And the countdown continued. Helios shift had been humanity's last chance. Now there was nothing left to fix. Earth was locked into its new orbit. Clouds no longer formed. The sky took on a permanent amber haze, and the air tasted like ash. The Amazon turned into dry savanna. Glaciers were gone. Rivers evaporated. The hydrological cycle, the engine of life, had stalled. Vegetation shriveled in hours. The last green vanished from Earth. By day 60, the upper atmosphere ignited. And perhaps Earth's story wasn't over after all. Rain stopped falling. Outside, the Earth cooked. Inside, humanity clung to its final breath. Civilization had become a whisper. In the absence of rain, deserts expanded. Survivors retreated into polar caves, under ice shelves, into deep-sea stations and mountain bunkers. Cities were buried under dust. And then, something strange happened. From deep space, a signal appeared. A rhythmic pulse. It wasn't random. It followed a pattern. Prime numbers, golden ratios, even Earth's original solar distance. Scientists scrambled to decode it. Someone or something was watching. They knew what we had done. They knew Earth had moved. And they were offering ... something. Was it help? A warning? An invitation? No one knew. But one thing was certain. The universe had responded. But that is a story for another What If.